thank you all for being here today. I feel so honored and blessed to be able to kind of talk with you guys about failure and redefining failure, especially Abu, who is a filmmaker who has a lot of experience in Chicago. That's where most of his career was. But a couple years ago, he made a feature film sorry guys. I'm a little nervous. This is my first time moderating a panel. And if I fail, I will learn something new. But yeah, in our country, we're kind of taught to strive towards perfection, and if we fail, it's ultimately a sign of weakness, of inferiority, and maybe a sign that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing. And so I'm here to tell you that's all not true. It's all crap. We can throw it out the window. And here we're going to kind of talk about our own experience with failure, how we've learned to kind of overcome that, and ways in which we can use our past experience to help reframe when we experience failure in the future. So my first question for our incredible panelists is if you can tell us your first memory of failing and what it felt like.
Let's go first. First? I mean, I'll go. I think that's kind of a really tough thing because, I mean, I think I'll just say it and I think maybe you guys will agree. I've failed so many times at so many things that it's really hard for me to really think about what led me to the path that I am on today. So I guess I can say that because of that failure, I was actually able to go in a different direction that I think has made my life significantly better.
Yeah, I mean, I could go in a lot of different directions as well. First, though, that's a really special one. The way my dad taught me how to swim was he would pick me up and just toss me into the deep end of the pool, and I would kind of make it to the side, and then he would kind of pick me up and toss me back in. And I don't know. There's a mammalian thing, I guess. You just learn how to swim that way. But it felt like I was dying. It didn't feel like I was swimming. And I think this actually might connect to just kind of larger how we approach experience in general and failure in general. Like we walk around expecting to be able to know and do things that we just like. I didn't know how to swim. I was like 4, right? Like, but it felt like a failure because I couldn't. So yeah, that's number one. I guess there's a lot.
And I guess for myself, I kind of had a similar experience as you, Javier, with not getting into the college of my choice. I kind of had my mindset on a certain college. I only applied to like 5 colleges in high school, and I really wanted to go to Hampshire College, which was this like hippy-dippy, no tests, no grades, like just a college focused on learning. And I was, so excited to go to this college. I just knew I would get in. I visited, I made really great connections, and then I got a rejection letter from the college, and it was my best friend who also was going to the same school and had gotten an acceptance letter, and she said, why don't you just call them? They made a mistake, I mean, you're incredible. Why don't you just give them a call and let them know that they made a mistake? So for me, I was like, oh, okay. I don't think that's how it works. What? But I did it, and I called, and I kind of asked them, was there something particular that you were, not impressed by? Do you want to know more about my volunteer experience? I was just kind of going down the list. And then I talked to the admissions counselor for what felt like an hour, and at the end she said, we did get that wrong. We're going to send you the acceptance letter. Yeah. So sometimes you don't have to accept failure either, because we're all human, we all make mistakes, and you kind of have to put yourself in the role of the admissions folks, in that situation. They're looking at hundreds of applications, and you can slip through the cracks. So it is also important to kind of take it a step further and not always accept a no.
Yeah, we're gonna tap more of that energy of like how do we not accept it and how do we like push back a little later on in this panel, but thank you all for sharing. We're gonna kind of switch focuses a little and we're going to talk about our journeys to becoming filmmakers. And we're going to start with Javier. So Javier, you'll speak about your journey, and then we're going to play a clip of a film that you directed and worked on.
Yeah, so I kind of fell into filmmaking kind of by accident. I didn't really have access to film equipment or camera. You know, my family is from Guatemala. I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 12 years old. I never thought that this would be like a viable career choice for me. And I basically just didn't have any access to any of this stuff. But as I said, I went to a college that I really thrived in and really liked. And I wanted to be an anthropologist, and so I did a lot of cultural studies. And then I was thinking, well, I'll become an anthropologist. Maybe I'll go into academia. Maybe I'll become a college professor. Right? That seems like a very viable career for me because I liked learning and I was good at writing. And so, but then I took a video class. Kind of just for fun, and what I realized is that I could reach a lot more people and explore a lot more things much faster in a way more creative way. And then I was kind of hooked, and I remember, I went and did my video, basically changed my major, went to video, and then worked at an art gallery for about 6 years. And then I really wanted to get back into filmmaking, so I went to graduate school at San Francisco State. And I really was kind of a very eye-opening experience for me because it allowed me to be around filmmakers that had been established and really kind of go to a film school, because my school wasn't really a film school. And through that process, after I got my MFA, I started a production company. And so I've been working on my production company and then also making films on the side. And I think partly to speak to some of what the other panelists were talking about, partly because I felt like there is a strong lack of representation, specifically from Central Americans, specifically from indigenous people, in documentary and film industry. And I got kind of tired of seeing people tell stories about us without including us, without our voices, and then seeing them and thinking, well, I'm just as capable as these people, actually, if not more, right? If I have more access, I can talk about cultures in a very particular way. I know certain things, and so that kind of led me to pursue more documentary work, and then I made this film, which I think you're about to see a couple of minutes of. And when you're making something, like they said, I had a lot of failures. I thought no one was ever going to watch this movie. It was going to be my mom and my dad and my grandpa, and, and then it went on to do really well for 2 years. It went to a lot of festivals and things like that. So even again, not believing myself during this process, it still kind of went through and paid off. So that's kind of my journey into documentary filmmaking.
Okay, so
I'm gonna play my film.
sorry.
Santa Tierra tiene mucha historia. Pero lamentable que no se puede testimoniar. Ella pues lo vio perfectamente cómo fue la construcción, cómo fueron los engaños, los maltratos. Lo vio bien, cuántas personas se murieron, los corrieron. minuto. Tenían bastante historia en la Santa Tierra. Los cerros y los ríos.
So the question was, sorry, Aaron. The question was how I got into doc. So I had, this is great because it also involves a lot of failure, or things we could call failure. I mean, I'm very happy being a doc filmmaker. I think it's probably where I really thrive. But I had internalized a lot of kind of cultural expectations and tried to be, like in 10th grade, I took like a pre-engineering class. Thought I was going to be like an electrical engineer or like a computer scientist. That, I mean, I didn't fail the class, but I just hated it. I got to undergrad, tried to be a physics major, fell asleep in class like every day. Realized at the end of that quarter that I probably shouldn't be a physicist. And film had been kind of like lurking in the background. It was something I was really interested in the entire time. And it's, I mean, a career in the arts was not something I had really even allowed myself to think about in a serious way. Maybe for the same kind of forces of shame and fear of failure that we're talking about here. But ultimately I did kind of let myself believe that, let myself think about that, and I'm here today. So.
We can play Dinesh's clip now.
Coming to America Reframed.
When I was 6, I became an orphan. We grew up like boxcar children, raising each other.
A filmmaker turns his camera on his family, trying to understand his parents' lives and tragic deaths.
I don't really remember her.
I just remember thinking, who are you? What is this person? Does she hate me?
I don't necessarily want to open up wounds for people.
It's a journey that takes him back to India, a country he barely knows.
I didn't even know if I was pronouncing my own name correctly.
And it forces him to think about the mental illness that seems to run in his family.
Once suicide enters your reality, you live in its shadow.
Unbroken Glass on America Reframed.
Okay. I guess my journey kind of began in high school. I was a part of a social justice organization called Project South. I'm from Atlanta. And I was doing a youth radio show where we would interview different community members and different youth activists. And that kind of got me into like doing media, but I didn't actually see myself doing it as a career. It was more like a hobby. And during my first year of college, I took a course where we were reading like a lot of James Baldwin books. And our final assignment was to make some kind of short film or media or performance art representation of what we'd learned during the class. So for me, I made a short film that was kind of experimental about James Baldwin's, like, his candidness around race in class in interviews. And that film went on to be stolen from the gallery that it played in. And then for me, that was like important because I was like, oh wow, I made something worth stealing. So from there, I kind of changed everything that I was doing. And I was like, well, maybe I can continue to do this. Obviously, I'm making people upset, and I kind of like it. So I'm going to continue. So that's kind of where my journey started.
My dreams are more realistic. Me doing a performance and dancing, and then me falling off the stage.
I saw a really bright light, and I saw something really circular. I didn't know what it was, looked like a hole, and then I realized it was a gun pointed at me. So I threw my hand up.
One of the things I was deathly afraid of was giving birth to a girl.
The main character in the story is who the story is about.
Okay, and I'm going to take another poll here. Can you raise your hand if you are interested in becoming a filmmaker one day? Yeah, great. Well, we look forward to being here in a couple of years with you guys on this panel and talking about your own experiences. But I would love to hear all of your experiences about failure in this career path in the filmmaking industry and how you've taken that failure and made it into something that has been a stepping stone into the success that you have today. We'll start with you, Lynn, if that's okay.
So the question is just how failure has added to my path. I mean, I guess that it's difficult for me because I feel like it's still happening. It's been happening, it's still happening, and I've kind of had this experience of failing up. So my failures just change as my path continues, but I'm always failing. And I appreciate that. I think for me, one of the things that I learned very early in like failing was probably during my senior thesis as an undergrad. I made 2 very experimental films about being Black and being a woman, and they were kind of centered around body positivity. And they were great films, but I was so afraid to put them out into the world and receive rejection, so I didn't even apply to any film festivals with them. I didn't show them to anyone after my thesis screening. I just kind of kept them to myself. And that felt more like a failure than actually sharing it with people and getting different ideas or different opinions about the work, because I was so afraid of just taking that step to share it and to hear what other people thought about it. So early on in my journey, that was probably my biggest problem, was just kind of keeping things close to my heart and not really sharing them with other people because I was afraid of what they would say. And now my failures are more so like, maybe I'll apply to this film festival and not get in, but at least I applied, because then there's that film festival you get into. And you know, you gotta try. And that's been the biggest thing with me, is like, don't limit yourself. I just feel like we get in our own way so often. And for me, like, failure has like become something I welcome into my life. Like, I keep all of my rejection letters in a folder on my computer. And then when I get accepted by those same festivals with different films, I like to send them those as an attachment.
How do they respond to that?
Yes.
Oh, we didn't know that was you. Oh, this is the same filmmaker? You know? So it's just keep track of your journey, you know, and keep receipts.
Yeah, I think I can tell a story that dovetails really nicely with what you were talking about in terms of your senior project. I made the film, the trailer you just saw. It's a feature. Took me many years to make, and I finished it, and I started applying to festivals with it. And I applied for literally a year and only got rejections, like 12 months of rejection. This is after many, many years of making it, and also it was such a deeply personal project that I couldn't disentangle. Like, it felt like I was being rejected. Even though to get to that point, there's tons of rejection in terms of grant funding and co-production and the like, but you can't not help take it a little personally. So yeah, I just remember after like 12 months, I just looked in the mirror and I was like, I get maybe this is not going to go anywhere. And clearly that was not the case. I stuck with it. I continued to apply. I started applying to different festivals. It found an audience, etc. It got broadcast. But I guess it's easy to say like, oh, I learned from it or I adapted. But I guess I want to talk a little bit about how I learned, like what I learned from it. To me, like, failure is the same as grieving, right? The process of grief. I actually think lately, like, maybe life is just grief. It's like grieving, like to be open-hearted and just to grieve openly. Like, I really had to mourn the vision I thought I had for the film. It wasn't going to go to Sundance. It wasn't going to win Emmys, just by virtue of what had happened at that point. So I really had to kind of like envision that and kind of like find the emotional language to let it go, and that is grief to me. That's how I grieved my parents, ultimately, like 2 decades after they passed away. So yeah, I don't know. I just think that like that was a profound experience and one that like let me like welcome failure in the future, because now it's just like a way for me to learn how to grieve better with a more open heart.
So your question was about how to deal with failure, or what?
Or failure that you felt in your career.
Oh, failure that I felt in my career.
Use that as a stepping stone.
Yeah, well, I can tell you right now I'm experiencing a lot of failure, actually. I'm working on 2 different films, and I think, part of the process of making documentaries, unless you're really wealthy, is that you have to ask really wealthy people to give you money so you can continue to work. And so there is also about 200 other very talented people asking the same people for money with very worthwhile projects, many of who are my friends. And so, I get rejected a lot, and then I don't. And I celebrate the ones that I don't get rejected from, but I get rejected a lot. And I think, I guess it's it's a little of both, I would say, because I do think part of it you should grieve it, part of it you should be upset. You shouldn't just be like, oh, I learned from this and moving on. You should grieve it. And then, but in the same breath, I want to say that you also should kind of not take it personally. And I think that is one of the ways that I've learned to cope, is to grieve it and then also not take it personally, because I'm at the point in my life and my career where I am being asked to sit on panels like this, or I'm being asked to be on grant giving panels, right? Creative grant giving panels. And I read, 100 applications, and there is, 3 grants, right? And there might be 10 that are just exquisitely, amazingly good films or good art projects. And I'm only able to really vote for 3, right? Put 3 forward. And I really want to, I can't, but I really want to reach out to those other 7 people, or those other 30 people, or those other 100 people, and be like, really, this is not personal to you. This is just what everyone agreed upon were, the things that we were looking to fund this year. And so, with that breath, at the same time, I just got rejected for a grant like last week, and I was really bummed about it. I was really sad. I was really excited. I thought I was really gonna get it. I thought my film was gonna move forward, and I got a letter saying, yeah, I'm sorry, there was 87 applicants, and you just didn't get this grant. But what they did do, which was interesting, which I think is a new thing, they were like, if you'd like to know why you didn't get this grant, we'd love to tell you. And I immediately replied, I was like, yes, please. let me know, because I'm also interested in like learning, right? Because a lot of these things that we consider failures, and I think you said that about your audience, aren't really failures. Sometimes I think I'm knocking on maybe the wrong doors, or I'm knocking the wrong way on doors. And a lot of these, you know, it's like college applications or anything else, right? It's like you really kind of have to target it to who those people are. But how you learn to deal with failure, I don't know, therapy and sleep and friends, and then also keeping it moving, right? Grieving it, very important to grieve it, and keeping it moving.
Yeah, I think one of my strategies too has been to see my work as different from my worth. A lot of times, if I get a rejection, if I get a failure, I'm like, they hate me, I'm a terrible person, like, what am I doing with my life? But yeah, my worth is different from my work, and it doesn't mean that it's like anything personal. Usually it means it's a lot of competition and all that stuff. But yeah, how do you guys remind yourself of that? Like when you're feeling really down, when you feel like a failure, what is your like go-to, like after you like self-soothe and like, you know, watch Netflix and like eat a tub of ice cream, like how do you get up the next day and be like, okay, let's tackle this?
Well, for me, I like to just think about how small the failures are, like in the grand scheme of things. Like, I know that I'm incredibly lucky to be in the place where I am, even if I'm not, you know, not where I want to be, and even if I'm still on my path. You know, I was a first generation college graduate and first generation MFA graduate from my immediate family. So those things are like important to me. So I know the things that I'm worrying about, like my creative vision or a film festival that I got into, those aren't the same struggles that my parents have on the day-to-day. And they're grateful that I get to have those things to worry about and to think about. So that's kind of what gets me out of my funk, is just like actually feeling lucky enough to have these things as my problems.
Yeah, I think like exercising gratitude is a really great way to deal with that. I think also like we kind of lack a sense of like object permanence or permanence. Like we think, oh, I'm a failure now. Like if you get one rejection or one really big rejection, and it's like, oh, this is who I am now, I guess. So I found it really helpful to just like tell your story, retell your story, remind yourself of what your story is. Like, yeah, like your worth is not your work. Like you aren't your failure. You actually, there were so many things that happened to get you to this point. Really good things that to be grateful for to get you to this point. And so just kind of figuring out a way to retell that story and maybe incorporate this new piece of information, this new rejection or what happened.
I think these are, I mean, I agree with both of you. I think that I think it's also like I also just want to say that like really I guess also be grateful and also take some accounts of what's going on in your life. So there's like 2 years once that I just had like everything I touched was gold, right? Like all my grants were coming through, all my fellowships were coming through. I was like, man, I'm never gonna get a rejection letter ever again. I'm doing great. And then I would get rejections every once in a while, and I'd be like, whatever, I got this other thing, not a big deal, whatever. And then I've been having about 1.5 years of not getting anything, zero, nothing, and I thought that I had moved past the feeling of grief. I thought that I had moved past the feeling of getting bummed out by it, but that's not true. And I think it also kind of has to do with where you are in your life. Like, are your relationships good? Are you making ends meet? Are there other stresses in your life that are going to make that failure feel a lot more intense than it is? Because if you are in a place where you are doing well and you get a failure letter, it hurts. But if you're in a place where things aren't going well, then it hurts a lot more. And I think just taking stock of that and realizing that so many of us have been dealt different cards, right? Some of us are dealing with so many different things in our lives that when, you know, some people, like, when you see them, when you hear of their failures and how they bounce back, it's like, well, it's not just that they're just super resilient and great, right? It's that, and that could be true, but that, you know, they didn't have to worry about housing, right? Their partner bought them a house, or they own a house, or you know, or they didn't have to worry about healthcare, or they didn't have a health problem, or whatever, right? Like, I think it's just important to, I guess, really kind of be grateful, and also grieve, and also like consider your circumstances, right? So that you aren't attaching all this worth to your work, and aren't attaching all this worth to that rejection and that failure, that there might be other things lying underneath the surface that are actually also adding on to your feeling of feeling like a failure, or feeling like a fraud, or feelings of inadequacy. I think it's important to take stock of that when you look at it. It helps me, at least, look at things a little bit more objectively and be like, okay, this hurts, but it also hurts because there are other things going on in life.
Great. So before we open it up to a Q&A, I just want to give our panelists any time if they want to share some final advice or words of wisdom to our audience here. No? Okay.
Well, I just want to put in a plug for being a mentor and also seeking out mentors. So I feel like each of you are at a place, no matter where you are, where you can mentor someone. And you're also at a place where you can receive mentorship. So just keeping that path going. And as you get further along in your career, it's never too late to like get a mentor. I still have mentors, and I still mentor people. So that's all.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And if I could just add on to that, like part of that as well is cultivate a really good community. I feel like we often deal with failure by ourselves, just completely isolated, but like your friends are all filmmakers, or probably will one day be. You'll have friends that are, many friends that are filmmakers, and they'll be managing failure and rejection in the same way. And to do that together, it's not only easier, but it also kind of bonds you in ways that are just really special and create that community as well.
Yeah, I would say that's key, for sure. Having people in the trenches, for sure. I would say the other thing is really learn to celebrate other people's success as well. Like, if you don't get something, like if I don't get a grant but my friend does, of course it's hard for me, but like I really want to be happy for them, and I genuinely am really happy for them. And I feel like that kind of environment, that kind of energy kind of really translates to dealing with things. And I think the other piece of advice would be don't spend so much time looking at other people's like great successes on social media, because that can totally be deceiving, and you have no idea what really is going on beneath the surface. Like, everyone's really great storyteller, actually, and I'm really excited about that people are great storytellers on social media. But I think sometimes we're spending too much time looking at social media, looking at how other people are like in really good festivals, they're doing this and that and that, and then you actually talk to them and you find out that that's great that they're doing that, but there's other things going on for them in their life, and there's other things they got rejected from. It's really easy to share all of your successes with the world. It's a lot. It's a lot more uncommon to share your failures. And I think one thing that I've noticed on social media, at least with the people that are around me, is that they're starting to share actually their failures, which is great.
Yeah, so I encourage you guys all to share a failure today on social media and be vulnerable. I think going back to like what Lynn was saying, with like not even wanting to apply to film festivals with her first film because she was so afraid of putting this out in the world and failure. I think we should kind of reshift to kind of celebrating our effort rather than celebrating our success. So every time you submit something, every time you put yourself in a new situation to meet new people, just kind of like celebrate that effort, because ultimately, if you keep doing it, it will bring success. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we have a couple of minutes for questions. Here.
Okay, so once you find somebody who you want to be your mentor, how do you recommend like reaching out to them and actually asking them, like, hey, can you give me, I don't know, knowledge or advice or just whatever you want, you know?
So the question is, how do you actually kind of like establish a relationship with a mentor? Ask, how do you, get advice? Yeah.
No, this is a great question, and I think it's definitely different for different people, but obviously, if it's a person who you want to be your mentor, there's a good reason for it, so I'm assuming that they are approachable in some way. But yeah, I think usually just sending the email of like, want to meet up for coffee or tea, and mentioning that, being familiar with their work and saying, oh, I really like this project that you did, this specific part of the project like really touched me on a deep level. Like just like being honest about why you want them in your life. And people love to be flattered. People love it. People love to be complimented. So like they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I'm great. Let me meet up with this person. But yeah, I mean, I've done that a lot, and also just not being afraid. I feel like sometimes we put certain people on pedestals. Like I have filmmakers that like I've always wanted to meet, and then I meet them and like I want them to be my mentor, and it's actually an easier conversation than I thought it would be, because they're just like, yeah, like I want to support you. You're young and like you're doing this great work, and I want to be able to give back. So a lot of times it's just actually giving them an opportunity to mentor you, because a lot of people want to do it, but they don't necessarily know where to go to do it.
Yeah, that's, I think, great advice. I think you kind of nailed it. To that, I would add, people do love talking about themselves, as you can tell just here. Also, just like give people the opportunity to help in the way that they can, right? So like, there might be a mentor who can really help you with fundraising. There might be a mentor who can really help you with creative feedback. Oftentimes people come to me and they want me to help them with things that I'm just not good at, and I can't help them, and that really kind of ruins the relationship, but it dampens the potential for that to happen.
Thank you for the question. Mm-hmm.
On the topic of mentors, how do you, in the first place, find mentors and members of the community when, at least like for me, in my community where I live, Jersey, I haven't been able to find too many people involved in that. I don't have connections through family or anything. How do you find these connections to meet people who could be mentors?
Mm-hmm. So how do you find connections if you are in a little bit more of like an isolated community to mentors? Well, what's your name? Martine. Thank you for coming today. And just by you being here today, maybe you can walk away with a mentor, and I can share my card with you after. Yeah, and I'd love to place you in touch. So just being here is a really great start. I brought cards today, so like if you want to be in contact with me, I'm just going to give them out. But yeah, like putting yourself in places where you can meet other people. And also if you don't have people in your immediate community, maybe seeing if you can email someone or just being in the same place where they are. Maybe they're doing a free event, or maybe there's a screening happening, and seeing if you can speak to them after that. But honestly, I really just commend all of you for being here, because I really think this is the first step.
Yeah, I would say, yes, and find an organization, right? Find an organization that you like. I now have mentors at the San Francisco Film Society because I am an artist in residence there, right? Had I not had that, I probably wouldn't have those mentors. But what I've learned is that a lot of these organizations that seem so like big and far away and for other people are actually for you. And that you should, if you really want to be a part of that, like reach out to those things Because I think sometimes, and I don't know if this is the case for you, for me sometimes I can feel like, well, they're not going to be interested in what I'm doing, and you know, I don't really belong in that room or in that organization anyway. And I think it's just good to reach out. I know a lot of filmmakers that have just reached out to San Francisco Film Society without being an artist in resident, and you're like, hey, I really want space here. And the San Francisco Film Society has been like, you know, actually, we have more space than we think so come on, yeah. And have brought them on to have all the things that artists in residence have, literally just by asking. So yeah, I think this is the first step, yeah.
So with that, thank you guys for coming out. Please approach us afterwards, get those business cards, get in touch, like get these mentors. You're like Class A mentors up here. And yeah, thank you. Please like really try to take this into your personal lives. And when next time you have like a failure, try to like reframe it and see it as, you know, your pathway to, you know, getting success, because ultimately it is. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. So in addition to coming up and securing business cards, I'd also like to challenge you. We have individuals, everybody thinks maybe the majority of people are from the Bay Area. We actually have people who've driven as far as 2 hours to be here today. So please connect with the different people. Step outside of your comfort zone, take a healthy risk, and connect with someone. So please make your way up here, make your way over to lunch, and we'll get started soon. Thank you.
Thank you, that's great.
Yeah, good stuff. I love talking about failure. That's actually my favorite thing in the world. It's really the thing I'm most qualified to talk about. The problem is the failure doesn't correct itself. Hey, thanks for the question. Yeah. Where are you from?